Hi, my name is Mary Dudley and I'm the Director of Education at the Civic Garden Center. Today we're going to talk about the basics of seed starting. Starting seeds is a wonderful way to get your school garden growing. There's a couple different ways that you can think about starting seeds. You can start seeds directly outside in your garden at the right time of year, or you can start seeds inside for plants that need a little bit of a head start before they go out into the garden to finish their harvest cycle before the end of our garden season. I'm going to talk about both ways of seed starting, and we're just going to go step by step. Before you start seeds, you really want to get prepared. You want to make sure that you have the seeds, the soil, the containers, or the garden area that you're going to be planting in. You also want to make sure that you have some water on hand, and you want to pay attention to the moisture requirements of those starting seeds. I'm standing in our propagation room at the Civic Garden Center. In this propagation space, we have trays, we have lights, we have heat mats, we have ways to monitor humidity and temperature, and we also have ventilation. These are all really important aspects of starting healthy seeds. First, you want to start with healthy soil. You can use a seed starting mix, or you can create your own, but we don't recommend starting seeds indoors using soil that you have collected outside. Sometimes those soils can be a little bit too tough, or you might have issues with different funguses or viruses that might be present in the soil. Ideal seed starting mixes are nice and fluffy and do not contain nutrients. Plants, when they're starting out from their seeds, actually don't require a lot of nutrients. Their nutrients are all found in the seed itself. Plant seeds are fascinating. They are actually holding a dormant but living organism. And when that seed breaks dormancy, we call that germination. Many seeds break dormancy by soaking up water, and then when they have soaked up enough water to make it through the seed coat, their first little root starts to grow. That little root will need somewhere to go, and so you'll want to make sure that you have a nice aerated soil ready for them. The seed starting mix that we use at the Civic Garden Center includes a few different elements. We have a nice fluffy mix of perlite, vermiculite, peat moss, and compost. In your outdoor garden, you'll want to make sure that your soil is also well aerated, which means that it's pretty fluffy and that it's not super chunky. You want it to be even. You also want to make sure that it's able to hold on to moisture for a little bit of time, but also drains well. So you really need kind of a balance there of soil that is well draining and soil that can retain some moisture. The soil for starting seeds should be damp, but not soaked. You want it to be kind of like a wrung out sponge. You really want to maintain consistent moisture so that you don't have extremes of dry and wet. Also, you want to have adequate light. If you are sowing seeds directly outdoors, you should be sowing those seeds in an area that gets the adequate amount of light for the plants that you are trying to grow. If you're growing indoors, you could grow in a windowsill, but it's really nice to have some extra help with your lights. We grow under full spectrum LED bulbs. You can buy these lights online, and they work very well for seed starting, and they really help your plants avoid something which we would call leggy. Leggy plants are reaching towards the light, and as they stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch and try to reach that light, they tend to grow very quickly and can get very long, and their stems stretch out significantly, which can weaken them so that they're not as robust as they would be if you had lights that were directly above the seeds so that they didn't have to stretch so far. You can grow seeds in a lot of different trays or pots. Just make sure that what you're using has drainage holes in it. Some pots don't have drainage holes. These pots will hold water at the bottom, and you could have an area that just kind of stays swampy all the time. That leads to root rot, and so you don't want that. So make sure that your pots and trays have drainage holes. If you're starting your seeds indoors and you're not keeping your indoor environment at a consistent temperature, you can add something called a heat mat. These heat mats raise the temperature around the bottom of the seeds a few degrees and provide consistency as the seed grows. Some seed starting kits will come with a humidity dome, which is a clear plastic dome that will go on top of your seedling tray, and those are a good way to keep humidity high while those seeds are germinating. Once those seed leaves start coming out and you see things emerging from the top of the soil, you want to take that humidity dome off to make sure that the plants don't get too wet as they continue to grow. It's also recommended that you have some kind of ventilation. If you have an oscillating fan that moves back and forth, or you're able to open a window, some way that you can have airflow. These plants actually are strengthened by airflow. And so if you run your hands over your little seedling plants as they grow, that will strengthen their roots. It's a very good thing to do to keep dust off of them as well. If you're ever unsure about how to do your planting, you can take a look at your seed packet. These seeds are recommended for direct sowing outdoors, which means that I am not going to start these seeds indoors. That's important for root crops. Most of our root crops do not transplant well, and so it's a great idea to start these seeds directly out into the soil. It says to plant in full sun, which is about 6 to 8 hours at least, well-drained soil, we already talked about soil, and to cover the seeds firmly with soil, planting about 1/2 inch deep. If you plant too far down, then the seeds won't have enough energy to break through the ground. So you want to make sure that you are following that planting depth. So let's get to it. First, I'm going to make sure I have what I need. I have my seed packet here. I have a pot. I have some soil. And I have some water. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to get my soil damp. This is an important step. You want to make sure your soil is damp so that it settles into the pot properly and so that that seed instantly begins to be able to absorb that water and break dormancy. Okay, now I'm going to put some soil into my pot. Mix that up here. I didn't fill it all the way up. I did leave some space for water to sit. So there's a little edge around the top of my pot where I don't have any soil. That is useful. Then I'm going to see how deep I should plant these. It says planting depth is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use my 1/2 inch measuring tool that I brought with me today. And I'm going to make a little space right in the middle of this pot. I'm going to carefully open my seed packet because I am not going to use all of these seeds today. So I'm going to want to save my seed packet and put those seeds away for a different day. Now I know that not every seed will grow, and so I want to make sure that I do get some growth. And so here I have 2 spinach seeds, and they're pretty small. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to what is happening with your seeds so that you don't have them all over the ground or all over the floor. You can put them into little Dixie cups or little Petri dishes to help organize the seeds, but they are very small. So now I can put my seeds into my pots. I'm going to cover them up. And that's that. I can give it a nice watering now, nice little soaking, so that I have water coming out of these drainage holes so that I know that it's going to be able to start absorbing water and breaking dormancy so that it can germinate. I'm going to put this under a light source on a heat mat so that I can see these seedlings starting to grow. I also have ventilation in this space, and so I know that this is a good spot for seed starting. My package tells me that I should be waiting 8 to 10 days for germination. So after 2 weeks, if I am not seeing anything come up in this pot, it's time to start over with a clean pot, new soil, new seeds. Hopefully though, I am seeing something come up so that I can actually be growing something and I could taste something. If I'm outside in my garden, I could plant these seeds directly in the garden just making sure that I'm not planting too deep, that I'm sticking with that 1/2 inch, and then I'll be able to make sure that that moisture stays consistent with either monitoring the weather or watering by hand. These little seedlings that have been grown indoors will need some transition time before they go out into the garden. And so if you have grown things in your classroom and then you want to put them out into your school garden, be sure to give them time to transition. This is called hardening off, and it takes 3 to 4 days at least. So what you'll do is you'll take your little seedlings outside for 2 or 3 hours one day. You'll bring them back inside. The next day, maybe it's 4 or 5 hours, and then you'll bring them back inside. And the next day, add a few more hours, etc. I like to transition my plants for about 4 to 5 days. In addition to avoiding sun damage, I also want to make sure that these little plants are able to withstand these temperature changes that we go through during the nighttime. And so giving the plants a few days to transition from indoor to outdoor is really important for healthy plants. Another thing you'll want to consider when you're growing outside is protection from herbivores. Living in urban environments means that we are sharing the spaces with other wildlife, and those wildlife might find your new seedlings very tasty. So if you are growing sunflower sprouts or peppers or tomatoes, it's a really good idea to put up some kind of protection, whether that is wiring or fencing or caging in some way, maybe even a fabric cover, anything that you can do to deter little birds or squirrels or chipmunks from digging up your seedlings and taking them off would be a good idea. Here at the Civic Garden Center, we love to support teachers who are starting seeds. Happy planting!